Welcome to another episode. What are you reading? What are you writing? A weekly video podcast features creatives, writers, and readers when we come together to talk about books. I am your host, Karen E. Osborne, author of 4 novels and counting. I am so glad you're here. I think you're going to enjoy our next guest. So you are going to meet today Bob Tiede. And Bob is someone that I have to admit, I'm just so excited about this interview because I have been following him for years. And many of you know me and know about my passion for questions and listening. And Bob shares that passion. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Karen, great to be with you.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. So let me tell you just a little bit about Bob, other than I'm a fangirl. So he has the newly revised 3rd edition of Leading with Questions: How Leaders Find Powerful Answers by Knowing How and What to Ask. And he wrote this with a colleague, right? How do you pronounce your colleague's name, Bob?
Dr. Michael Marquardt.
Michael McCourt. Yes. And they really deliver this powerful, powerful, practical uh, way of talking about questions, why they should be involved. And he also has a spiritual component to his questions too. So anyway, I'm just so elated that we are here to talk about questions. So it came out last year, right? This 3rd edition. When did it come? When was the first time it came out? What year was the first time?
Well, Karen, this is part of my story. I'm privileged to co-author the 3rd edition, but whenever I speak, I share that, my entry into this whole topic. Well, if we back up, most of my career, I was a benevolent dictator. I did not understand the value of leading with questions. I thought the job of a leader was to tell staff what to do. And I did say benevolent. I grew up in a home where I was taught to say please and thank you. So if you've been on my team, I don't think I ever would have said, Karen, go do this. It'd been more like, hey, Karen, here's what we're working on. It'd really be great if you could please do this.
Don't do this.
Yeah, but I still was, telling. And then Karen, I would have said thank you. And a staff meeting, Karen, stand up. You all need to hear what Karen did. But in 2006, I found a new book. Now, I love books. Like you, Karen, probably in every leadership book I've ever read, there's a morsel, a takeaway. But in 2006, I found the 1st edition of Leading with Questions by Dr. Marquardt. And as I read this book, it was a page turner for me. I mean, it was filled with stories of leaders literally from around the globe, not just the US, and the questions they were using. And as I read it, I held only one question: why hasn't anyone ever shared this with me before? I was like an instant convert. It just made sense that a leader who leads with questions would be more effective. Well, I'd started my blog, and it's another story. When I started my blog, I smiled as I typed in Leading with Questions as maybe the title, thinking surely the author, who I did not know at that time, or the publisher would have tied it up. But it was available at like $29 a year, base price. So I grabbed it and I started blogging. And I decided I wanted to get some content out before I wrote Dr. Marquardt. And I had no idea how he would respond because I didn't know him, professor at George Washington University. And so when I wrote him, I shared how his book had changed my leadership. I'd started this blog, and I asked if I might have permission to excerpt from his book, make it a feature, link to Amazon or whatever he would prefer. And within 24 hours, I had the most gracious email. Bob, you've made my day. Yes, you have my permission. Well, Karen, fast forward a couple years later, Dr. Marquardt did the 2nd edition. And when he was getting ready to do this, he reached out to me, said, Bob, would you write an endorsement? And could I list your blog as a recommended resource? It was like, yes. And then I had opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. with a group, and we met for the first time. In fact, he came and spoke to our group. And during that conversation, I was calling him Dr. McQuart, and he said, Bob, it's Mike. Just call me Mike. So we became friends. Now, fast forward to about 2 years ago. Well, it's the third edition. It's the first time I was invited. Dr. McQuart reached out about 2 years ago and said, Bob, it's time for a third edition. Would you be willing to be the co-author? And I said, Mike, you're a professor at George Washington University. You have a PhD. Yeah, I have a bachelor's from the University of South Dakota, but no more. Why would you want me to be your co-author? And he said, well, Bob, in the interest of full disclosure, a new edition requires about 30% new content. And he said, your blog has been out there now for 10 years. You've excerpted from almost 100 books. You've had 300 to 400 guest post authors. Bob, you've actually already done all the research. So summer of 2022, we spent about 6 weeks working together. And Karen, let me say, Dr. McQuart is a brilliant man. He knew what he wanted to delete from the second edition. And there's 10 chapters. Each chapter has a different theme. And what I would do is feed him 10 times as much content as he would need so that he could pick and choose. But he did the editing. He deleted from the second edition, inserted the third. And even when we were done, Karen, I said, Mike, some books are titled authored by with. Wouldn't that be more accurate? And he said, Bob, no, I want you to be the co-author. So Karen, this is such a gift.
So
I was
that is
yeah, go
that
ahead.
is amazing and wonderful. There's so many lessons in that story about reaching out and not being afraid and connecting. And so, you know what we haven't actually explained to our audience? We're talking to them as if they're already converts,
Yes.
right? They
Yes.
already get it. So what is the power of questions? Why questions?
Um, well, Karen, another thing I share whenever I speak is I ask two questions. I have two slides, two pictures. And I always say, and Karen, I'll ask you these questions. We'll go somewhere. But the first question is a silly question. And I say, now imagine a big rowboat. It's you and your team, you and 9 others. You're the leader of that team. There's oars for everyone, and you want to get that rowboat across the lake as quick as possible. How many of them would you have row with you? Yes, all of them. I told you it was a silly question. But now imagine that same team is around your conference table and there's an opportunity on the table. You've just shared, hey, gang, here's an opportunity for us. Now, listen carefully. If you're a leader like I used to be, the benevolent dictator, and you think it's your job to figure out how to take advantage of the opportunity, and then you're going to tell them what to do, how many mental oars are in the water trying to figure out what to do? Yes. But if you're a leader who leads with questions, and so you say, gang, here's this opportunity, and you look around your table, make eye contact with the team members, say, what do you all think we might do? Karen, now how many mental oars are in the water?
Everybody.
Yes. What is the probability that you might hear an idea better than anything you were thinking?
Way up.
Yeah, not a guarantee, but in hearing 9 other.
Chances are, though, and not only I find that it's not only that they might come up with a better idea, they also help your idea be honed. It's not that maybe
Oh,
your idea is the best idea, but all those other minds are going to add
yes,
something, some thought, some tilt. And then, of course, then it's our project and our
yes,
opportunity.
yes, yes, exactly. The team is now, as you said, executing on their plan. Involvement creates commitment. They're getting to execute now on the plan together they came up with. And as soon as I saw that, in fact, I think any leader that sees that says, well, of course, that's how I'd want to lead. Um, Hearing better ideas, getting ownership, because the team is now executing their idea. And once you see that, it's like, wow, that's how I want to lead. And that's the value I share, that a leader who leads with questions is often 10 times more effective than the benevolent dictator.
Absolutely, absolutely. And questions are valuable in so many other contexts. I wish I had known about questions when I was raising my teenagers. I think life would have been much easier when my kids were teenagers. So, what do you have any like favorite questions?
Oh, I do. I do. Uh, Karen, again, whenever I speak, I ask my audience, who here would like to learn to lead with questions in 30 seconds? Well, every hand goes up. And today, Karen, you're my audience. So I always pick someone out of the audience. And as they come up, I say, the reason I chose Karen is I think she has a photographic memory. She's only going to have to hear my 4 favorite questions once, and she'll instantly have them memorized. And so, Karen, I have a second hand on my watch. The clock will start when I say my first favorite question. I'll share all 4. I'll then say, do you have them memorized? And if you say yes, I'll say, share them. And the clock ends when you share the 4th question. So no pressure, Karen. Are you ready? Here we
Hey,
go. My first favorite question is, what do you think? Second, what else? Third, what else? Fourth, what else? Karen, do you have them memorized?
what do you think? What else? What else? What else?
Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to change this to who would like to learn to lead with questions in 12 seconds. Now, some in the audience, listeners, are probably just a little skeptical, like, Bob, you can't ask somebody, what do you think? What else? What else? What else? And I say, well, not in that rapid fashion, but it's a conversation. And on the first question, you're going to add a topic. Hey, Karen, what do you think we ought to do about? And you're going to name something. And Karen's going to answer. Now, before I understood this, ask the question, get an answer, I moved on. I didn't understand that we all kind of instinctively, that first answer we roll out is we're testing the waters. It's kind of a safe answer to see how will they treat it. So Karen, if I asked you, what do you think about something? You gave me that first answer. And I said, well, Karen, that's stupid. Everyone knows that. Well, you're sorry you answered. Next time I ask, I'm going to get nothing. But when I say, wow, Karen, that's good. What else? Well, you relax and think, wow, Bob appreciates what I'm sharing, and you'll give me more. And again, you'll pause. And when you pause, instead of moving on, I'm likely to grab a pen and say, Karen, I've got to take notes. You're giving me pure gold. Please say more. What else? And you will. And what I've discovered is that I actually get to their gold nugget, their very best thought, with the 3rd and 4th question. And remember, the promise here was, who would like to learn to lead with questions in 30 seconds? Karen, what I love about leading with questions is so many of the best questions are so simple. They're not long, complicated kind of things. It's, hey, here's the issue, whatever it is, turning like, well, if you've been the benevolent dictator and your next meeting with a staff member one-on-one or with your team around the table, whatever the topic is, by just saying, hey, what do you think we might do here? And then listen and say, wow, that's good. What else? Wow, I'm taking notes. Please say more. You will have moved just with these 4 questions from the dictator to leading with questions. It's that simple.
Well, you are talking my talk. You talk. I usually call it unpacking. How important it is to unpack and not move on. And it's hard to unpack if you haven't been listening, right? So
Yeah.
listening, I see over your shoulder, listen and silence. Um, right?
Same
It's so
letters.
important. And I also always say pauses are your friend. Pauses are your friend. Yes. So
Yes.
this is great. This is so wonderful. Um, you've given me some great examples of how you teach this and encourage people to take on new questions. Um, what resistance do you ever experience? Maybe somebody doesn't think of themselves as a benevolent dictator. Maybe somebody thinks that they're an awesome leader. And I ask questions all the time. And how do you help people expand their thinking?
Well, that's an incredible question by itself, Karen. And my thought is the fact that I start each of my presentations with my confession. I think others identify with that, but they also say, okay, Bob's a real person. Yeah, Bob has not been a perfect leader, and I'm still not a perfect leader. I'm in process. Um, but I think that makes people feel like, wow, yeah, I kind of identify with who Bob has been. Another thing I share from time to time is I'm a charter member of TA. And people say, TA, I don't know that I know about TA. And I say, well, maybe you've heard of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, TA is Tellers Anonymous. We go to our meetings and I stand up, my name is Bob, I'm a teller. And while of course that's fictitious, a fictitious organization, almost every time I speak, people come up and say, Bob, I too am a charter member of TA. And you know, another question I ask in my presentations is, in leading, what are the advantages of telling? And there are times we need to tell. And then I ask, what are the advantages of asking questions? And they share those. And then I say, well, which one is better? And they usually say, well, asking questions. Then my next slide is a jet plane. And I say, when you're flying, which wing is more important? It's like they better both be perfect. And in leading, we need both also. But then I say, truth be known, most of us, if you can imagine your right arm to be your telling arm, most of us would say it's well developed. I'm good to go on telling. If you can imagine your left arm to be the asking arm, most of us would say probably doesn't have equal strength to the telling arm. And so I say, because we're good to go on telling, I'm not going to focus on telling today. We're going to focus on strengthening the asking arm so you can have equal strength. And I guess, Karen, I'm giving you insight into my thinking, but you've been teaching this too. I'd love to know your thoughts on how you overcome resistance. Um, I find by just being real, by sharing that I'm not always there in the presentations, also sharing, hey, I still miss this from time to time, that it lowers the bar, it lowers the resistance.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. I also have people in my workshops try it. That's another great way for people to, I just pair them up in twos and
Yes,
they experience it. And
yes.
then I ask them, how did that go? What did you think? How hard was it?
Oh,
How easy was it? And boy, you get converts. So if any lingering converts, it's
Karen,
overcome.
yeah, I do the same thing. And
Yeah. And
and
what's
later,
interesting too, Bob, is that this works in any country.
oh,
There are cultures, my friends in Britain, my friends in Hong Kong. Oh, Karen, this is so American, this question asked. We don't do that. We don't do that. And I would just say, well, if you were to do it, how might you do it so that it would fit with your culture? And they always come up with answers and they always find that it works. But we're going to run out of time, Mr. Bob.
yes,
So we have to move on. And this is called "What Are You Reading? What
yeah.
Are you writing?" So you've only shared one book that rocked your world. Are there any other books that have had a profound effect on you?
Yes. Now Discover Your Strengths by
Yes,
Marcus
that's on my
Buckingham and
bookshelf.
Donald Clifton. I always share, prior to this, conventional wisdom in developing people has been like, if I was doing your annual review years ago, you'd have walked in, I'd say, Karen, in the first 5 minutes, you're really good at this, this, and this. And then I'd get a little anxious because I knew the focus of it was to say, but Karen, there's some things I need to share with you. And there's some things you're going to need to work on. And then I focused on labeling your weaknesses. And again, in conventional wisdom, you probably thought, yeah, Bob's right. I do have those weaknesses. And so then we would develop a plan for addressing those. And you dutifully, being a good employee, would go after it. And again, thinking this is the way you develop. Well, you read this, and the thesis of this book is the world's greatest leaders do not focus on overcoming their weaknesses. They focus on developing their strengths. And in a team setting, they focus on teaming up with people that have strengths in areas they don't have so that everybody gets to do what they do best. A football team would be a great example. Every player, when they leave the huddle, gets to go play the position they're best at. You don't have a lineman trying to throw the football. You don't have a lineman trying to catch the football. You have everybody in their strength. Man, as soon as I saw this, read it, it was like, yes, I was an instant convert. So that's one that's had a profound impact on me.
Yes, I agree. I agree. That one's right. And before uh we came on, you and I were talking about Sobel and Panis and their
Yes.
power questions as another. Oh, I see you have his little one too, his little one on your
Oh,
shelf.
yes. We both have that little gift book. Yes. That was an
Another
incredible little
excellent,
gift.
excellent book. Well, this
Yes.
has been so much fun. This has been such a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Now you've got everybody excited. I mean, really excited. So, how do they find you? Follow your blog, uh,
Yes.
or get
Please,
to know you?
I invite everyone listening, just go to leadingwithquestions.com. Just run those words together, leadingwithquestions.com. If you, once you're there, cursor towards the bottom, you'll find a place to enter your email address, click on subscribe, and you'll be joining leaders in over 200 nations who are committed to increasing their leadership effectiveness. Subscribing is absolutely free. And then another thing you can go after is I have 5 free ebooks available. If you go to leadingwithquestions.com, on the top, you'll see the word books. This was the first one, Great Leaders Ask Questions. This is actually was the second one and now the latest one. The original was 339 questions Jesus asked. We found one more. I'd forgotten to add a question that's recorded in the book of Acts. But in this edition, there's also contributors from around the globe writing chapters to help us understand and give further insights. And then there's now that's a great question. And then I love quotes. This is the little book of big quotes. It's available as a free ebook. And then 260 questions Paul, the Apostle of Christ, asked. And again, these are also available in multiple languages. So if your first language is other than English, you may find it there, but you may have friends, colleagues, coworkers whose first language is other than English. And even though they're fluent in English, all of us love to read in our first language. So at any rate, all of that's available for free download. Now, the newest book here, co-authored with Dr. Marquardt, is available on Amazon. And Karen, I've designated all my royalties to go to our leadership development efforts in the organization I'm a part of, which is Crew. So it allows me to be enthusiastic in promoting it because it's not going to me personally, it's going to our leadership development efforts.
This has been, you are an inspiration, an absolute inspiration. It is lovely, lovely to meet you. And I hope all of you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have enjoyed it. I hope that you will come back next week for my next guest. And what are you reading? What are you writing? Have a great week, everybody.